Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. It has been a very long time since I've made a video about Socially Distant, but development is going insane right now, so I'm really happy to show you guys something. But also really mad to show you guys something, because what I'm going to show you guys is a pretty nasty performance issue that is going to plague the game for at least a couple months while I figure out how to optimize what's going on here. I thought I'd show you guys what's going on because, yeah, it's an important mechanic I'm working on, and it would be really nice if it was a little faster. So what do I mean? Well, if I zoom in for you guys, you're gonna see in the console there's a lot of these outputs in the debug log saying script took this long to execute. What that's coming from is Socially Distant's script runner, which is also the part of the game that handles the in-game command line, because for many reasons the command line uses the same underlying language as the game's gameplay scripts. I don't do them in C#. I only do the core infrastructure of the game and like simulation code and stuff like that in C#, and then actual gameplay code like mission scripts and chat encounters and things like that are done in a custom language based on the POSIX shell, because that's also what the in-game command line is based off of. And the script runner is the part of the game that runs those scripts. It interprets the actual code and it executes it on the fly asynchronously in .NET. You know, many of these script execution timing outputs here are like reasonable. They're sub 1 second. In some cases they take less than a millisecond. But there's one right here. Script execution took 8 minutes and 42 seconds. What happened there? Also, this one right here, this null reference exception, don't worry about it. It's benign. It happens during game shutdown, so it won't affect anything anyway, but I will figure that out later. If I go to play maximized, by the way, I'm back on Windows, so that's my next video. And start playing the game. There's no zoom in the terminal yet, but it should be a decent enough font size for you guys to be able to read it. So, I'm working on hacking, and specifically I'm working on network recon, which is going to be covered in the next devlog. By the way, if you want to get the devlog a week earlier than everyone else, then feel free to support me on Patreon, because it helps me develop the game, and it helps me keep the Acidic Light community servers afloat. And yeah, I'm not going to plug the Patreon until the end of the video. But anyway, it's really simple. You have 3 primary commands for network recon. The first one is ipconfig, which, if you're familiar with Windows, it does exactly what you think it does. It lists out the network interfaces on your current device and gives you some of their network configuration info. Script execution took a whopping 46 milliseconds. Like, it's reasonable. Actually, I don't know what that's measuring. It might be nanoseconds. I don't know what time span is measuring here. But either way, it's less than a second. And we are currently on the subnet 192.168.1.0/24. And the reason I know that is because the subnet mask over here says 255.255.255.0, and the default gateway is 192.168.1.1, and I know a thing or two about IPv4 networking, and I know that if the subnet mask is this, and the default gateway is this, then you will be on 192.168.1.0/24. And if I want to scan the network, all I have to do, because I know what local network I'm on, the game knows what local network I'm on, I can do nmap And this will go ahead and scan the current subnet for other devices. And it'll take a little bit, but it'll do nothing. Because of a bug. We're gonna ignore that. I don't know what happened there, but I'm still working on all of this. It's not perfect yet. We're getting there. But if I do the same thing again, but actually submitting an actual subnet for it to scan, it should be more reliable because it's different code. So let's check this out. See if it works. Yeah, there we go. So this is what it's supposed to do. It lists out the IP addresses on that network. And it was quite fast. It took 2 seconds. The reason it took 2 seconds is because a lot of IP addresses in the range timed out, and that's how long the game will wait for each IP address before it says it times out. It will wait 2 seconds. So this command will always take at least 2 seconds, and that's fine. But let's say that I want to scan the public internet and find out what's around me. Now, the game's in development, so a lot of this stuff is available as a player, but as a developer, I can go into the dev console and I can look at the network by going to networld debug. Yes, it's not a typo, it's called networld. That's to distinguish it from networking, which is a multiplayer concept in game development, whereas networld is the game's internet world. It's intentional, deal with it. But if we go to, if we go here to find public hosts, it will list out all of the public hosts except for the player, and it'll categorize them based on internet service provider subnet. So we have one ISP in the game right now. It's a placeholder one. I've called it Lunar Telecommunications Inc. And it is on the subnet 204.31.0.0/16. Keep that noted down. There is one host on the subnet, 204.31.253.190. Also remember that. There's one other host, and it's the player, but that's not listed here because of how the player works. But you can see that this host is called the Blackwall. That's the network name, and that's what would show in-game. And if I copy the IP address, go back, I will copy it to my clipboard, and I can then use the ping command and paste the IP address in. And as you can see, we do get replies, and they are quite fast. It will take a few seconds for the command to execute, but that's, again, okay, because it's actually doing a ping, and, you know, it has to wait for the ping to come back from the server, and it does it 32 times. So, you know, do the math. So that worked. And if I do nmap on that address, it will also work. It will go ahead and do a port scan, but because of a bug, and the fact that I'm refactoring this, that might not work right now. We'll give it a minute. Okay, it should have exited by now. So I do believe I have hung this terminal, so I will have to restart the game. I know what's causing that, don't worry. I will fix it. But either way, if that were to have worked, it would have done a port scan and listed out all of the ports on that device, or on that network. Now, let's say that I want to scan that device's, or that network's subnet. I keep saying device because it's an IP address, but it's actually a network. That's the public IP of the network. But let's scan it. And remember from before, if we want to scan a subnet, we do it like this, where we specify the amount of bits go toward the network, which in this case will be 24, and we should only see that one host. And we do. And it takes about as long as it does to scan the local subnet. That's fine. It took a little bit longer, but you can see that it outputted a domain name here because it did reverse DNS lookup, and blackwall.net is what points at that IP address. So that's cool. That works. Now, let's be a little bit more broad. Maybe we want to find everything that's currently connected to this ISP. Well, we know the subnet from the debug menu. So we can put a 0 here and a 0 here, and then do /16, and that will scan the entire internet service provider's IP range. Or not, because apparently I can't handle typing. There we go. So /16, and we do the thing, and we wait. And I promise you guys, the game is not frozen. You can tell that it's not frozen because of the flashing cursor, and also the fact that even though the time of day is kind of white on a very bright background, if you invert the colors, you can see that it is actually ticking up. But you might notice that every now and then, the time starts to tick inconsistently. It's very tough to notice, but you will notice it. And what's happening there is the frame drop. And it's still scanning, it's still chugging along. And there's really nothing to see here. It's just scanning an IP range. So, yeah. How you guys doing out there? Because this is gonna take a while. This is gonna take a really long while. Like, I cannot stress how long it will take for this to happen. And this is a very common thing you might want to do in the game. You might want to find out what's around you on the network, what's around you on the internet, and, you know, be able to see that so that you can hack things. Obviously, you could browse the web browser to find things, and you could look at the city map to find public businesses, but you might not see them because they might not be advertised. Not everybody's house is going to have their public IP address advertised on Google Maps in real life. And thus, it might not be advertised in the in-game city map. You will only see businesses that want to be seen on that map, and you'll have to do some extra recon to find it. And this is how you do it. You do subnet scans. You do not reverse engineering. You do social engineering of NPCs. You browse the internet. You find things. It's an exploration game, and you know, your terminal is completely unusable while this is happening. There's nothing to accept key presses. There's nothing to, like, let you cancel out of the command. You have to wait. I have not implemented the Control-C SIGTERM thing that Linux has. I've not implemented that. I plan on it, but not now. I didn't think it was a necessity. Of course, now I'm kind of second-guessing myself there because, you know, this is taking forever and I would like to cancel it. But also, if I don't cancel it, we will eventually see it work. I promise. I don't know how much longer I can stall while I wait for this, but, yeah. You can see this is quite a problem. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the player that has to experience this and not know why it's happening. Of course, I do know why it's happening, and as you can see, there was one IP address that just showed up there. It did find something. It actually found the player's IP, which is cool. It found us. But has it found Blackwall yet? Well, I don't know, because it's still scanning. And, you know, the time of day, it's been a few in-game hours. It's taken its sweet time. The frame rate is decent. It's not perfect, but it is decent. And it's still scanning, it's still looking, it's still waiting, the cursor's still flashing, the game has not crashed yet. Unity Editor surprisingly hasn't crashed yet, and I surprisingly haven't blue screened yet. Yeah, if I haven't mentioned already, I'm back on Windows because Linux kept on giving me headaches with Restitched, and now I'm realizing that I'd probably rather work on Restitched than wait for this damn network scan to complete, even though I'm working on Socially Distant right now, and the entire point of me working on Socially Distant is because I've been neglecting the game for too long. Holy fuck, why am I rambling so much? It's still going. I've run out of things to say. I'm very thirsty. I might actually have time to grab and drink a drink before this ends. You guys think I can do it? I saw the cursor take a little bit longer to flash. Yeah, you noticed that. Come on. I know you're doing something socially distant. Come on, game. You know what? Screw it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna grab a drink. I don't even care. I'm too thirsty to continue this video. I'm actually grabbing a drink. Still hasn't found that other network. I don't even need to read the screen, I can see it. I'm in performance hell right now. I really want to talk about why this is so fucking slow. But I want you guys to see how fucking slow it is first. Come on. It's still going. You know, usually I would be waiting for this by being in a Discord chat. Isn't it sad that I have to use a Discord conversation to wait through my game working? I really should program a progress bar into this, but this wouldn't be true to how... There it is! There it is! It's almost done! Yeah, there it is! It finished! Fucking finally! Script execution took... actually not too long. It took less time than the last time. It took 8 minutes and 36 seconds. So what's going on here? Well, Socially Distant has a network simulation, obviously. I've talked about it way too many times. And the way it works is it's a graph of nodes, and there are four types of nodes. There's the core router, which is kind of represents a game server, and since this is a single player game for now, it represents the entire game world. And connected to the core router node is all of the internet service providers. Right now, there's only one, Lunar Telecommunications Inc. And from there, we have local area networks, which connect to internet service providers. And local area networks are things like blackwall.net and the Players Network. They have public IP addresses inside of an ISP's network range. And then inside of local area networks, we have device nodes, which are individual computers. Now, each node in the simulation can have any number of network interfaces. And those map to the exact same thing they do in real life. On the player's computer, there are two network interfaces, and that's what you see when you do ipconfig. You are seeing the game's representation of the two network ports on your in-game computer. One of them is the loopback interface, and that's your local host, your 127.0.0.1. The other is your connection to the internet, which is also the connection to your default gateway, but, that's muddying the waters here. This is your connection to the LAN, the local area network. And if I ping localhost, I'll get responses back from 127.0.0.1 because that's the loopback interface and it's responding back immediately. And if I ping 192.168.1.2, which is not localhost, it'll take a little bit longer for the pings to come back because it has to go through the default gateway and come back to us. There's one extra hop, basically. That's the theme of the issue here, is hops. Each simulation update, every network interface, or every node is allowed to perform one hop worth of processing network traffic. And the way the game works is when you run the ping command, every time you see this reply from and then the IP address, that is one Pong packet that came as a result of sending one ping packet. Now, the game allows you to send up to 1,024 packets per network interface per node. Any more than that, and the game will actually throttle you, or throttle the connection and delay them to the next simulation update. That is the core of the problem here, is that packet transfer limit. The fact that you can only send 1,024 packets down a network interface at once. That means when you do a ping command, and you send 1,024... I could probably demo this with the shell, but I'm not going to. But basically, if I were to send 1,024 pings using my player computer, all of them would be able to transfer over the network in one single frame. They would go... not one single frame. It's confusing. I'm sorry. They would be able to get to my LAN in one single frame. And then they would be able to get to my ISP in the next frame. And then my ISP would send them to wherever they're supposed to go in the next frame. And then wherever they're supposed to go, we'll reply back with a Pong packet, which gets sent back to my ISP in one frame. And then that will come back to my LAN in one frame, and then that will come back to my computer in the next frame. So I think it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hops when you scan a remote network and ping it. And that's why it's fairly fast. It takes 5 in-game frames to do that. However, that's for pinging one host 1,024 times. or pinging 1,024 hosts. What happens if you ping an entire internet service provider subnet? Well, remember the subnet for that one ISP, Lunar Telecommunications. It was 204.31.0.0/16. What that means is 16 bits of the IP address range are dedicated to the network. That effectively means that these 2 bytes here, up to these 2 dots, those are the network. And then everything else, the rest of these 2 bytes, are for all of the addresses in the network. Now, if you know a thing or two about binary, you know that 16 bits is 65,536. 35. 16 ones in binary is that number. It is 65535. Which is decidedly a lot more than 1,024. So, when you do an nmap of the entire IP address range of the internet service provider, you have to scan 65,000 IP addresses, which means sending 65,000 ping packets, which means 65,000 packets have to travel 5 hops from your computer to their destination, and then it ends up taking 8 minutes. Now, I'm going to show you guys how I would optimize this, because, well, not how I would optimize this, but how I would kind of make it trick itself into running faster, because I do know some tricks. If we go to the network map command, this is the code for scanning a subnet. It's right here. So it takes in a subnet and it figures out the IP range for it, and it basically, it does it asynchronously. That's so that everything can be done in pseudo parallel. So that it doesn't like take 8 years to scan the entire range. It can do a bunch of them at once. Yeah, we're gonna need to create a list of tasks. Task list. And instead of awaiting this task.whenAll, we're gonna go ahead and get rid of it, and we're gonna do task list.add, and then the task that gets returned from whenAll. And then all I'm gonna do down here is I'm going to await task.whenAll task list. And I'm hoping that it'll take a collection and not just an array. Yes, it will. And then this should allow me to run a bunch of parallel tasks in parallel, which is probably going to hurt my CPU, but we're going to try it. I might actually spin an entire core for a while. But let's give it a try. We'll do a simple test. We'll scan our own network, which shouldn't take too long. There we go. So that proves that the code does work. Now let's try scanning that subnet. And as you can see, doing that has hung the game. Well, not quite. It hasn't hung the game, but it has severely deteriorated the game's performance. The cursor's no longer flashing. And nothing came back from the, nothing actually executed Why? Why did nothing execute? Well, it's because we hung the main thread and the simulation is run on the main thread. None of those pings were able to propagate through the network in time. So that's not good. Now I'm thinking I could possibly do an await task.yield right here. Or maybe one here so that it awaits. Every iteration of this for loop. So we'll give that a try. I'm not hopeful though. Okay, so the game should restart, but it has not. Okay, now we'll try again. So that time it didn't hang. But will it find any of the hosts? I found one. Frame rate is starting to dip below what I'd like it to be, but it's still going. Give it a minute. It's still going. Frame rate has decreased even more. Check the stats. Yeah, the editor's a little unresponsive. We're running at about 1 frame per second. That's not good. 1 FPS doing a net scan. That's great. And we didn't find the other network. So, that basically means that not all the packets were able to propagate in time. Now, we can try doing anything we want to make this better. It's not gonna work. The core problem here is that we're doing everything on the main thread. All the UI is on the main thread. All of the command line processing is on the main thread. The sending of network packets is on the main thread. What did I do? There we go. The unqueuing of these tasks is done on the main thread. Receiving of network packets is done on the main thread. And as much as we try to optimize a lot of this, the only way to fix it is to offload some of the work to another thread. Now, what could we offload? Well, the network simulation is very it's very self-contained in that whenever I'm programming the game, I'm mostly just sending packets into the network simulation and waiting for responses to come back out. I don't have to concern myself other than updating the network simulation when the world updates and updating the node graph of what's actually going on inside the simulation. It will dutifully send packets around the network as long as the network update is triggered. So what if we could multi-thread the network simulation? Well, it would probably improve things a lot, right? Now, another thing we could do is increase the packet transfer limit. Because right now what we're doing is the game is only transferring a fourth of the packet transfer limit every time it sends a bunch of pings. So we could either increase the packet transfer limit from 1024 to, I don't know, maybe 4096. And then we would end up sending 1024 ping packets per bat in the nmap code. And then it won't saturate the network transfer limit, but it will... who knows? Let's try it out. Still taking a while. And as you can see, even though we have increased the packet transfer limit and we're still not saturating it, it is still sending more packets than my computer can handle. So that's causing the frame rate to drop. Now, it is still working, and it did actually find that host a little bit faster. Not faster than the last time, but faster than the first time. And it is going to hopefully succeed, because everything's synchronized. However, again, I'm still sending a lot more than my computer can handle at once. And I'm sending 1024 packets each frame. And the game has to process all of that, and it takes a while for it to do that. So really, the only solution here would be to offload the network simulation to its own thread, so it can just go ahead and send packets around as fast as humanly possible on another core, so that it's not interrupting the main thread. The only thing the main thread has to do is wait for packets to come back. And I guess pause simulation during a world update, but that wouldn't probably be too hard to do. I'm not great at multi-threading, though. That's the problem. But as you can see, the frame rate is very unstable, and it does get pretty bad. And, you know, if you were doing a network scan in the background while, I don't know, hacking into another device or browsing the internet or something like that, you would not be able to. The user interface would be completely unresponsive at this point. And that's not ideal. And it still did not manage to find all hosts. Basically, whenever you're sending more packets than your computer can handle, a lot of them will end up getting dropped, and a lot of them will end up not reaching their destination on time, and there's really no way around that. That's just what happens when you do cooperative multitasking, which is what this game does using async await. It does not do... it's not actually multi-threaded, and that's the core of the problem here. So yeah, I do 1024, and that seems to be what works most reliably. I could also increase the timeout for the pings, but then that would also cause the command to take a little longer. And I don't want to do that on you guys. I don't want it to last as long as a real Nmap scan would last. That's not fun. None of this is fun right now. And so yeah, that's what I'm struggling with right now. I thought you guys would be interested in knowing about that. And with that said, as always, I have been Michael, even though everyone calls me Richie, and I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I can get this fixed, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Fuck, I forgot to plug the Patreon. Oh well, you guys know it exists.